Hey everyone, welcome back to Random Spirit Podcast. I am your host, Cynthia. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to share something I'm extremely passionate about, something I hold very near my heart. You all know that I'm into healing, breaking generational trauma, chakras, ancestral trauma, and just healing the fuck out of that. I've created a program helping you heal and align through your chakras. If you're feeling stuck, disconnected, stagnant, unsure of how to move forward in your spiritual journey, in your healing journey, your girl is here to hold space for you. As a psychic medium and healer, I've created this program, which is called Journey to Self 70 Days of Healing Generational Trauma from the Root to the Crown. This is deeply transformative journey designed to help you heal, align, and rediscover who you are outside of these roles that we play in life. This program is designed for those who feel like the black sheep, misunderstood, heal generational trauma through chakra healing. We're freeing ourselves from old patterns so that we can reclaim the repressed parts of ourselves. We can love those parts of ourselves and we can step into our authenticity and into our power. I know starting any type of healing journey can be extremely overwhelming. I have been there. It is a lot. It is a lot to take in. This is why I am offering a free session called Break the Cycle Chakra Scan. Now, this is just like a little snippet. This is a little taste of what I have in Journey to Self. I scan one chakra wherever spirit leads me, one chakra, and I tune into your energy. I focus on that and I channel any insights to better understand any blockages, imbalances that you have in that energy center. I'll also share actionable guidance and activities so that you can go on and better connect with this energy center. We're connecting to our chakras. If this speaks to you, I would absolutely love to support you on your healing journey. This Break the Cycle Chakra Scan, I have a link that's going to be in the show notes that you guys can go on and book. Again, this is free to anyone that is absolutely sure that they want to join my Journey to Self 70 Days of Healing Generational Trauma. Reach out to me on Instagram or you can email me. I have everything in the show notes. Spaces are limited, especially for the free chakra scans. So don't wait too long to go on and claim your spot. Every journey begins with a small step. I would be honored to guide you on your healing journey. All right, let's dive in today's episode. Go on and grab your snacks, grab a drink, get comfortable. I hope you all enjoy this episode just as much as I did making it. Welcome, Laurie Ann Santos, to Random Spirit Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and showing interest in my podcast. What I need to have, I don't know if you've seen like on YouTube when people have that button and it goes, whoop.
You know the Jonah Hill one where he's like, I love that one.
I need to get on my editing game.
I love your energy. That's why I'm super excited to be here on the podcast because already just when the invitation was out there, that guest opportunity, I loved how you worded things. I just loved it.
Oh,
Felt
thank
really
you.
authentic. Yeah. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah, exactly. That's what attracted me to it because I was like, oh, then her community, she's going to have that reflected back in her community. And I also
I
love
hope
the
so, girl.
random spirit. Yeah, I hope this also. I feel like if that's the intention, then of course it will be met back. So thank you so much for having me be here with you and your community. Well, in a nutshell, I'm also from California. We learned behind the scenes
Woo!
that we're from California. I
The
hope
Bay girl.
I know this represent California in the house. But I'm the Bay Area girl. So I was born and raised up in the Bay, in a town right outside Oakland. And I later lived in Oakland. And yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
to the whole childhood stuff. But
Hmm.
what I do is I am a certified life coach. I've had my practice now. My practice is called Life Coach Laurie for 22 years.
Hmm.
And I am what's called a co-active coach, and I'm also a
Hmm.
human design coach, deeply trained in human design. Yeah, and so I'm a projector because those who are like, fangirling on the human design stuff, they're gonna be like, what is she?
That's
What is she?
me.
Yeah, me too, totally. But you're also a projector, so projectors are like, okay, tell me all about you. Who are you, and what are you about?
Hmm.
6'3" self-projected projector, and I'm what's called off the roof. So I'm in stage 3, and I have left angle cross of defiance, and I have the channels of inspiration and the channels of logic. So, which I really like that combination, to be honest, because I feel like, yeah, I love inspiring people, but also in a really logical way. Yeah, so
Hmm.
I can actually do it. But when I work with people, I'm an advanced EFT tapping therapist. So I use human design charts from my clients to inform how I should customize their EFT tapping sessions.
That's
And I pull in
amazing.
everything I was trained in with respect to my coaching, especially in the questioning or in the, tell me this or show me that,
Hmm.
that. And I'm really, really focused on helping them craft and
Hmm.
cultivate their ideal emotional freedom and their version of success. So that's what I do in a nutshell. And I primarily now work online because I live overseas. So I live now in the Netherlands. My husband is Dutch. We live on a little island. It's really beautiful. And my expat journey, moving out of the United States, happened actually as a direct result of me entering into the coaching industry because it was always a dream of mine to live overseas. And I'd gone through all my coaching and training
Hmm.
curriculum. And then I hired coaches to help me stay on that agenda, on that
Hmm.
plan that to move overseas. And then it did ultimately happen. So that's also why I feel very passionate about this work in personal development and in spiritual development, because it does work. It really, really
Hmm.
works.
No,
When
really, it does.
you're ready and you get with the right person and you have the tools that calibrate with you and match and work for you, man, you just fly after that. It's incredible.
No, yeah. You have me
Mhm.
sold. You have me sold. I'm booking with you, girl.
Cartwheel.
You and I both agreed that we're gonna be doing a two-parter. So just so y'all know, we're gonna get a taste of what my girl does in another episode, doing something new. I don't know if it's like a projector thing. I like to know, I'm nosy. I want to know how you got to where you are. And I genuinely feel like just captured me when we first spoke was you told me a little bit of your story. I feel like it's not talked about enough. And I don't know if it's not controversial, is it?
You mean estrangement? Family
Yes.
estrangement? Yeah,
Is
it's
it?
a
I don't
really
know.
great question. I like that you're asking, is it controversial? Is it taboo? This is so fascinating because let's see, 2018 is when I
Yeah.
became 100% estranged from all of my family.
Hmm.
Uh, Dad, aunts, uncles,
Yeah.
uh, the whole shebang. And back then, which is not that long ago, if you think about it, it's only 6.5
I
years ago.
know.
It was
Don't,
taboo.
girl. Oh my God.
It was really funny. It was taboo. It was very controversial, and there were not very many resources. There were not really any
Yeah.
nonprofits, NGOs, or anything like that to support family members who became estranged.
Yeah.
And there was one group on Facebook that I found, and it really spoke to me, the name of the group. And when I first joined 6.5 years ago, I think there were around 1,000 members, and now there's 10,500 members in that
Oh,
same Facebook,
wow.
which just goes to show how many more people are obviously taking this choice to either be low contact or no contact and 100%
Yeah.
is also, that group on Facebook turned me on to a nonprofit that was located in the UK. And that group was really powerful because they were the first of its kind. They were the first organization that was helping people actually on both sides. So if you
Hmm.
were an adult child estranged from your family, there were services for you. And if you were the parent whose child or children chose to be estranged from you, they also had services for those people as well. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, at the beginning of this year, the end of last year, I'm sorry to remember, but that organization closed down. But what they
Huh.
did was sort of normalize this, or at least get the conversation on the table so that people could talk about it without judgment, without shame, without
Hmm.
criticism, without
Yeah.
mudslinging as well. When I first, if you will, entered the estrangement community, I mean, there was just so much mudslinging, especially from parents whose children had decided to estrange themselves. Yeah, and it was really kind of interesting because it was like, well, we can kind of see why they took the decision,
Right?
this behavior. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would say it's being talked about a lot more. In fact, there was an article in The Guardian last week about estrangement. And there was an article, I think it was 2 months ago, it was maybe in August this year of 2024, that the New York Times had a long article. And I
Wow.
believe Vanity Fair, if I remember correctly, as well. So it is becoming more pronounced. And I think that we're seeing more people taking this choice because it has become more accepted, for lack of a better word. Or maybe that people are realizing more so now, oh, my friend has decided to go no
Mhm.
contact, or oh, wow, this therapist on Instagram is talking out loud about it and sharing posts about it. You're
Yeah.
seeing a lot more versus when just only 6.5 years ago, I took this step. There's so much more available in media, in articles, in on
Hmm.
Facebook, social media. And therapists, by the way, are about 20 years ago, so there were therapists who were in school, trying to get either their master's or their PhD,
Hmm.
who really wanted to study this particular subject. And their supervisors in their universities would tell them no, or would try to have them lean in a different direction. And now we're seeing there are more studies,
Wow.
case studies, yeah, that are being explored in the area of estrangement. So it's just that was fascinating to me because I did start diving into the what
Yeah.
research was, what resources there were, what literature was out there, and there
Hmm.
wasn't much. And I bought a lot of different books,
Hmm.
and some of these books were, sharing like, yeah, I was trying to learn about estrangement as I was getting my PhD. One woman had shared, and I was
Yeah.
literally told, she said, by her supervisors, no, I won't be your supervisor if you go down that road. Fascinating, because
That's
also
so
we've had this since
crazy.
the beginning of time. I mean, this is not anything new that,
Hmm.
families have trouble with each other, siblings have trouble with each other. I mean, it even goes to the Bible, for crying out loud.
Wow. I think there is, I don't know like what you call it. There's definitely a huge shift. I don't know if this is astrologically, human designly, spiritually, but like there's a shift happening and there's a lot of things that were taboo that are like coming out and I freaking love this, okay? Because like let's talk about it, right? In a like respectful way. I just want to tell you thank you for your vulnerability. If your girl was not suppressing, I'd be crying.
Thank you for saying that, because you know what? It's really funny, but it is
Yeah,
true. It's a very vulnerable subject. Like,
it
even I
is.
call it my estrangement recovery, if you will, or my estrangement path. And even though I've been now on this journey for going into my 7th year, and I feel,
Wow.
yeah, and I feel, lots of moments of peace and acceptance. But then I have my days where, like today, I had a day, where I was just like, what the hell, dude? Like, this is so lame. Why is this even a thing? Like,
Yeah.
does this have to be a thing? Or,
Hmm.
I just went through an experience recently, where an old friend of mine, I was like, oh my God, she's my mom. Like, she, I can't be with this friend. I can't have this friend anymore.
Wow.
I'm finally awake. I'm really awake to this behavior. But it also says to me, and now you know why you chose that person as your friend. When you chose that person as your friend, because it felt familiar, her dysfunction, you were very, very aware of it. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
all reflections of each other. I feel like it triggers a lot of people, but we are because I mean,
It's
wake up
so,
and see it.
if you have listeners who are on the estrangement journey, it's so delicate and it's such an intimate, it's such an intimate thing to go through, and it's extremely painful, and nobody would ever make this
Yeah,
choice ever, 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 ever if they didn't feel they had to. I would have never made this choice ever. I didn't want to like not have contact with my mom and dad anymore. My
yeah,
nieces, my nephews, my sibling. Like this was not even this just never even entered into my brain. And it got to a point where I felt like my back was up against the wall and I didn't have a choice. Well, I had a choice. I had to
yeah,
choose my soul and my emotional well-being and my emotional health and not be emotionally indebted to these people anymore who were not unfortunately willing to do their own therapeutic work, their own
mm.
spiritual, and that's not a judgment. That's not a judgment. That's really not me being, on my soapbox or I'm better than, not at all. I really, I want them healthy. I want them
Yeah,
well. You know, I love them still no matter what. That is 100% fact for me. It's just they never did. They have never gone to see therapists. They've never
yeah.
done any work. And so, yeah, at some point you outgrow each other then, don't you? You know?
Where you want to begin, girl, because I'm here for it. All right, I got my coffee. I'm like ready.
I could be wherever you want.
I have so many questions that are flowing, and I feel like we'll flow together. What led you? What was the breaking point? What was that?
Yeah. I think that I'm just gonna scoop my chair. It's probably gonna sound a little weird. I think that other people would probably agree with me who are also on the
Hmm.
estrangement path that there is a breaking point and there is kind of a final incident, if you will. But
Mm.
when I also look back, I also see that there was ongoing behavior and ongoing interacting. And there had also been prior moments throughout my life where I took breaks from them, if you will, or I said, like, I'm not going to
Hmm.
talk to you. Didn't. There was a period, I think it was like almost a year when maybe I was in my late 20s or my early
Hmm.
30s. And it was always my dad. I was like, I'm done. I can't talk with you.
Mm.
But the fallout of that would be then no contact with my mom. But then
Wow.
he would put my mom to task, like email me or call me to sort of make up or whatever. And he wouldn't come forward. It would not be him who would say, like, we need to talk again. We need to see each
That's
other.
how it is.
Yeah.
Avoidant.
Yeah, very avoidant. And also, he literally checks all the boxes in the DSM for narcissistic personality
Yeah.
disorder massively. Also, he was quite like exhibitionist, and he was very inappropriate in just so many ways. But back to sort of the final moment, if you will, and
Yeah.
we can go back to,
No,
childhood.
yeah, girl, take me back, baby. Take me
Yeah.
back.
Well, so look, maybe I should take you back. Then maybe that's kind of the first starting point.
Hmm.
So with respect to who my dad was, and then I'll tell you
Hmm.
how my mom was. So my father was very much my way, the highway, and he was a probation officer. And here's what's interesting, he was a
Oh,
juvenile probation officer, so he was working with kids.
well,
And yeah, and so was my mom, by the way. My mom was a Catholic school teacher working with 9-year-olds. So,
okay.
yeah. And what was always fascinating is when I would see them with the people that they worked with and they were in their element, like they just would look like the most loving people. And it always felt like they loved other people's children, in essence, more than.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, my father worked nights and my mom traveled from California to New York with her first job when she was not a teacher. She was a buyer with the Emporium Capwell, kind of like the Nordstrom, if you will, back then.
Okay.
And so I wasn't around her actually a lot. I was more around my dad and my dad's sister and my
Hmm.
paternal grandmother and my great grandmother.
Hmm.
And but my dad was he would get frustrated very fast, which would take him to rage very, very fast. And so I remember I don't know if this was my first beating, but I remember it's the one that I always go back to. It's the one event I
Yeah.
remember when I was 3. And Interestingly enough, I don't ever remember him ever hitting my sister. I never
Mhm.
saw that, but he had no problem taking my pants down and whipping me. And he had his phrase was, "I'm going to beat your butt." That was his phrase.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it wasn't a made up phrase. It wasn't one that he was like gonna, renege on. He always followed through on it. So I'm the oldest of me and my sibling between my mom and my dad. And I was really, really parentified. So we started walking to school.
Oh.
We started walking to school when we were really, really young. And my father would always say, make sure you get your sister home safely. He never said, you girls get your sister, you girls get each other.
Yeah.
It was my job. It was like my responsibility, and I was like 9 or so when we went to a new
Wow.
school and he was, putting this on me. And so I automatically, of course, stepped into that role, thinking, oh, okay, this is how I get love. If I'm a good girl, I get my sister home. I'm responsible, reliable, and
Yeah.
dependable. I'm going to be loved. I have to prove that. And so I never ever said anything. And of course, being that age, I never thought like, how come you're telling me to get her home safely? How come you're not making sure that I get home safely? At that point, when around 9, when we were walking to and home from school, things started to change in my family home, and I didn't know what it was. And so I started to call my house the house of secrets. Like it just was really palpable that there was a bunch of hidden stuff. And I can't tell you how I knew that, but it was like the feeling of unsaid was ever present. And I started to say this to my sister, even like, this feels like the house of secrets. And she would say, yeah, yeah, it really does. So she obviously was keen on it as well. Now I'm a
Mhm.
projector, like my sister's
Yeah.
also a projector. So we're both projectors. And projectors have that, they have those psychic abilities. They really
Yeah.
can, yeah, they really feel into the
Mhm.
space. Our aura locks into the energy, to the soul center, the G center of another. So we really pick up on a lot. We've got those spidery
Yeah.
senses. I think another piece of it was my father was watching porn at night. Like it was a highly sexualized house. He had like wall to wall Playboy and Penthouse magazines. I had access to these magazines when I was 3 years old. Because we
Mm.
had like this in-law unit, like a shed at the back of our house. And I
Yeah.
would just like off into the backyard, and then I would go, oh, what's in here? And I'd go in there and I would just look at these magazines at age 3, for hours on end, and nobody checking in on me. And then the Playboy channel came out when I was around
Yeah.
between 7, 8, or 9, something like that. And
Mhm.
then we would hear they had to put those pennies into the scrambler to unscramble the Playboy channel, and he would just watch
Mhm.
it for hours at night. He'd send us actually off to bed early so that he could do
Mhm.
so. And if we came down because we had a night near, or if
Yeah.
we're thirsty or whatever, he would scream at us to, go back upstairs to the bedroom. We would see, what was on the
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
He wasn't so like, I don't know. I didn't feel that he wasn't really trying to hide it that well, if you will. I mean, it was the
Yeah.
family television. It wasn't like he was in his bedroom or whatnot doing that. And he just was a rageaholic. So by the time I started to enter into my teens,
Mhm.
he would just scream, like his nose literally touching my nose, spit flying everywhere, face red like a tomato, just screaming and yelling. Like I wouldn't even know what he was saying. And I also didn't know
Yeah.
why he would get to that point. And I would dissociate. I didn't know I was dissociating, but I do now. So when I look back at those times, I've been dissociating since I was probably 3 with that first event when he hit me, and he beat my butt, as he would say. So basically, it's like I would just leave my body and just my eyes would just glaze over, and
Wow.
I didn't know at all. I wasn't there anymore, so I would just check out. Obviously, I mean, it's a protective mechanism to dissociate,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that happened throughout my entire teenage years, to the point where the worst incident was my, my mother started to show, I guess you would say, abusive signs,
Mhm.
not in the same way as my father, but in her own way. So I was around, I believe, 17, and my sister was 14. Yeah. And it's the irony of this story is it's so bizarre. But my father was upstairs having his bath or shower in the morning.
Yeah.
mom was ironing clothes. My sister was sitting at the counter eating her breakfast, and I was putting my shoes on, and the television was on. And I couldn't hear what was being said between my mom and my sister. Well, my sister
Mhm.
wasn't saying it, my mom was. And so as my sister's just eating her cereal, my mom is berating her, telling her she's stupid and dumb and a fucking
Oh.
idiot and just name calling. And it was really insidious, and it was persistent and pervasive, and she just wouldn't stop. But she was kind of doing it under her breath and like, you're so stupid, you're so dumb, like that. But just ramming her, just like nonstop.
Mhm.
At the same time that my mom is doing that, and I catch wind of, I finally can hear what she's saying, this commercial comes on. And this is new when I was growing up. This is when we started learning about verbal abuse and psychological abuse and emotional abuse. Like those words were not used until this time frame when I was around
Mhm.
17. And there were these big campaigns about, if you hear this, if you hear a parent doing this or whatnot, call this number or ask for help, and that CPS could get involved and so on. And I remember the commercial vividly. There's like this little boy, and he's like kind of
Mhm.
tucked in the corner, and he's got a father just yelling and screaming at him all of these, obscenities and
Yeah.
name. Basically, what my mom is doing right
No.
then
Mhm.
in that moment.
Beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
so trippy. And so I interfered, and I just said, Mama, like, it's okay. Like I just was really calm and gentle. And I was like, Mama, like, it's not nice. Just stop. It's enough. And my mom never hit me until this point. She just started beating me in my face. And I just stood there with my arms just straight down, mouth wide open, shocked. And I couldn't hit her back. I couldn't even defend myself. I didn't even raise my hand. I just kept like face. And I guess my father heard the screams from upstairs. And this is classic my dad. Didn't assess the situation, just immediately explosive, pulls me off and, throws me up against the wall. And I was like, what? Like, how is this even possible? Did you not see that she's the one, hitting me? What? So I just raced out of the house. By then I was driving, and I took off and I drove and I went to school early. But here's the interesting part. I never told anybody. Nobody ever knew that this was going on in our house. We were one of those houses where it was like sort of like image management, like my father's famous
Mhm.
phrase always was, what would the neighbors think? And my mom would always say, don't air our dirty laundry. So I was
Mhm.
really conditioned in this language. I was really conditioned in this mindset. But also because I was dissociating, I was stuck in the family fantasy. So I was
Yeah.
stuck in this role of like, just notice the good times, focus on the good times, keep paying attention to,
Mm.
sort of the romanticized idea of what a family is. So I overly romanticized every time that we had family dinner, or we went on a family outing, we went, on a family vacation,
Yeah.
or gathering with aunts, uncles, grandparents, etc. And all this information was with me and my diary. I started writing a diary when I was probably about 9. And I would write about these moments. I don't know that I wrote about like dad hit me, that I don't remember, but I wrote about, the sadness of it and the hurt and the pain and the confusion and how I just didn't understand. And my father, with classic narcissistic personality disorder, he was the type of guy who would say, okay, I want you to do this. And then because I knew how he was, I would do that plus more, just so that he could never say,
Mhm.
you didn't do this. And I would like up the ante, if you will, and do
Yeah.
extra. And then even though I did extra and the thing he wanted, he'd go, yeah, but you didn't do this. And I'd be like, yeah, but yes, I did. I did everything. And I even did more. Yeah, but you didn't do this. And he'd like create a new rule or create a new goal or create another directive, which is very common with narcissists to do.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, then I was so focused on overachieving and overgiving and, being the good girl, like, little Miss Goody Two
Yeah.
Shoes, and not getting in trouble and keeping my nose clean. So that way I could sort of keep this guy off my back. And no one, my father retired from being a probation officer. It's not like he ever lost his job. Nobody ever knew that this is what he was doing inside his own house. That essentially, actually, if CPS ever caught wind of what he was doing, we probably could have been removed from the home or
Yeah.
placed in homes with, other family members or whatnot.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's dad. Now, mom was the type of woman who attuned herself to her husband. It's kind of like not having her own identity, essentially. Whatever he says goes, and he's the king. And it doesn't matter that anybody else is hurting or that anybody else is suffering because of this guy. She's not going to address it.
Hmm.
And she literally, I feel like, would calibrate her energy to him. And that kind of woman, therefore, is not emotionally available. She's not emotionally available to her children at all. And she wasn't. My father, I will give him credit. He would say, I love you, or he would say, I'm proud of you. And he was an affectionate parent. She, on the other hand, was that icy, cold, doesn't say I love you, doesn't say I'm proud of
Yeah.
you, doesn't miss you type of parent. And the thing that's trippy about her is I didn't know much about her upbringing. She didn't talk about it very much.
Mm.
I knew her mom. I knew her adopted dad because her biological dad died when she was around 3. And so I was at my grandparents' home and stuff like that, when I was growing up. But she didn't talk about what happened in that house. I have a few stories where she talked about on some days she didn't know how her mom was going to be when she walked into the house. Would her mom be yelling and screaming?
Mm.
Lots of
Yeah.
plans. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
was her mom going to be smiling and happy? And my mom was an only child until she was 19. But by the time that she was out of the house, her half sister, was born when she was 19 and a working person having her own apartment. So she wasn't raised with her half
Yeah.
sister. Actually, I was raised with my mom's half sister because sister's 7 years older than I am. So my mom either, I don't know, she was doted on or spoiled or ignored or treated too much like an
Yeah.
adult since her parents were adults. Who knows? I don't know. But she didn't really want to connect with us. Well, I'll say me. Maybe it's not fair for me to speak on
Yeah.
behalf of myself, but with me, I don't feel she really wanted to connect. She had phrases she would say over and over again, family is overrated, marriage is overrated, people are
Wow.
highly overrated. Yeah. Every day I would hear this. And I didn't think about what's underneath that. Like, I didn't think about the meta. Like, what's the meta message here? Well, the meta message is she doesn't want to connect with anybody. She thinks family's
Mm.
highly overrated, marriage is highly overrated, people are highly overrated. Well, where do I fit into that? Then, well, I'm part of that
Hmm.
actually. I'll fit into that. And it wasn't until I think maybe 10 years ago, 2014 or so, where I was before I met my husband. I met my husband in 2015. I was in my apartment, I was on my couch, and all of a sudden I was like, you know what? You've never really addressed your mom. You've gone to therapy and you've addressed dad and you've addressed other stuff, but you have not
Ooh.
approached. But it's because you know what? My dad, that was in my face, right? It was
Yeah.
so hard. It was like, okay, I can see clear as day what the
Hmm.
problem is. And I could say to a therapist X, Y, and Z about this guy. But my
Yeah.
mom, it was so covert. It was so quiet. It was so sneaky and subtle. It was so, so hard to put my finger on, like, what the heck is going on? Like,
Yeah.
and what I realize now, looking back in retrospect, is her conditioning did get to me. Because if you hear from your own mom every single day, family's highly overrated, then your subconscious is going, my mom thinks I'm overrated. My mom can
Hmm.
just discard me and dispose of me at any time that she wants to. And
Yeah.
so I realize now in retrospect how I never yelled and screamed at my mom. I never talked back at my mom. Never. The one time when I gently said, Mama, let it go with my sister was the only time, and she beat me in my face for it. And and I obviously dissociated because I completely froze. But what I realize now is I did take those messages in, and what became apparent to me when I woke up in 2014 about her
Hmm.
was, oh, I never wanted to rock the boat with her because she would be out the door
Yeah.
easily, the door in my face and have nothing to do with me. So that brings me to the ultimate, how did it happen and when did I take the decision to be estranged? I met my husband in 2015, and it was really interesting meeting him. I met him on a plane. We were
Hmm.
neighbors sitting side, and I never felt energy like this. I never, of all the people I had ever met, interacted with, worked with, friends, boyfriends, whatever, I never felt an energy like this. And I could not describe what the energy was. I couldn't articulate it,
Hmm.
couldn't find a word, but I know what it is now. I felt safe. I felt
Oh my
safe.
God,
Yeah,
girl, I'm gonna cry.
you know, crazy, huh? And I didn't know. I mean, I remember being in on the plane with him, and we were
Hmm.
talking and talking. But I was like, something is, and it wasn't like oh, I got to get to know you kind of, it wasn't
No,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
in the vibe. He's a projector too. So we were just, it was like no one else was around. We were in a bubble and we
Wow.
stopped talking. We were just on the same frequency. And it's such a cute story. It's such a funny story. We were on the plane, stuck on it for like 6.5 hours because there were all these tech issues. And it
Hmm.
never left the gate. And then we got stuck in the airport for like another 6.5 hours. And he and I were just each other's companion and team player, teammate the whole
Yeah.
day evening trying to navigate this situation and essentially
Hmm.
fix it. And we were fixing, if you will, a problem where most people would be screaming their brains out, yelling,
No,
crying,
yeah, you guys are.
and not us. We were like, oh, we're making the most of it, And I think on a subconscious level, that blew my mind. The other thing I recognized was like he went off to go to the bathroom or something and he was gone. And I was like, whoa, it felt weird. It felt like I had a missing, like something was missing now from
Oh
me.
wow,
That was
girl.
really interesting, like this soul connection or something. But I also was very, very alert and aware that if I didn't ever see him again, I'd also be okay with that because I felt like, wow, I just felt comforted that I met a really good human being, like a really
Hmm.
person that I could be this way with. I felt
Yeah.
100% is also what it was, which to me, of course, is safety. So as we started to get to know each other, we were both living in the Middle East. We were living in Kuwait at the time. We became friends, and then we ultimately decided we wanted to be in a relationship with each other and get married. I moved to the Netherlands, so we came back from Kuwait to the Netherlands where he
Hmm.
was from. And I used to, before we got married or before we got together, I used to call my mom and dad pretty much every day on Skype while I was living overseas. So I was
Huh.
living in Kuwait for like 8 years or so overseas, and I would
Yeah.
call very frequently. But here's something interesting in retrospect. My mom never wanted to talk to me. She'd be like, let me get your father. And she'd put my father on Skype. And
Oh my
no,
God.
mom, I want to talk to you. Like, let me just talk to you for a few minutes. And she'd be gone. She just would not even be there. It was really weird. And she is an introvert. So I always would make up a story. Well, she's just an introvert.
Yeah.
She wants her alone time. My dad's a lot of work. He's a lot of emotional work. So she just wants her alone time. She's just trying to get that because I'll
Yeah.
occupy, she'll go off and be alone. Like
Yeah.
that's the story myself. But that went on for forever. That went on for all the years that I was overseas living abroad. She had done that pretty much since day one. So these things started to come to the fore. Like they were not in the back anymore. When I met my husband and I was now in an emotionally safe relationship, I started to see the truth. Like, wait a minute, it's so freaking easy with my husband. Like, even
Oh.
the talks are easy. So, like, how come I don't have this with my mom and dad? What is going on here? And
Hmm.
I started to notice I don't want to call them anymore. I was like, you know what? I don't want to call these people anymore. Like I was the person who was always making the effort, making the initiative between them. I would be the one that would call on the phone or call on Skype, send letters, send gifts. Like I was always doing this extra work. And I was also the one who was always traveling to see them. They never traveled abroad to see me.
Hmm.
Okay, that's fine. But it just starts to stack up. It starts to add up that I started to realize like there isn't any freaking effort here. Like the effort's all on my side. And that really was illuminated because the longer I was in my marriage and was in a communicative, open, helpful, supportive, loving, kind, compassionate, understanding relationship where we could talk about literally anything,
Yeah.
I started to realize that the House of Secrets was definitely a house of secrets and not transparent at
Yeah.
all. So in 2018, my husband and I traveled from the Netherlands to California and stayed in my parents' home. And we had done that also in 2016. So we had like a
Hmm.
year where we see them. And then in 2018, while we're there, I just noticed my mom is like moody. And in my opinion, being a real jerk to my husband, actually, just like
Yeah.
sarcastic and snarky. And I was like, ew, what? And another thing that, well, there, I didn't cut off the relationship then, but this one
Hmm.
incident while we're there freaked me out hardcore. So my father had had strokes and he was in a wheelchair, and I never knew if
Hmm.
he really needed to be in the wheelchair because it kind of seemed like an attention seeking thing, but yeah. Anyhow, he's in it and he's like using
Hmm.
his to walk himself in the wheelchair. My husband and I are sitting in the backyard and we're both reading separate books. And my mother comes out and she comes behind my father and she grabs the handles of the wheelchair, and the brake was not on the wheelchair, and she pushes him like she kind of starts to roll the wheelchair but pushes it really fast and lets go.
Hmm.
She's looking
Hmm.
at me and my husband and she's like laughing with her hands up, and I was like mortified because my father almost fell out of the wheelchair and
Yeah.
he could have hit his head and killed himself, or got killed or whatever. And I was just like, I just looked at her like, what are you doing? He was okay. He did not fall out of the wheelchair, but he looked back at us. He was like, what? What happened? And I didn't even answer him because I was just so like,
In
and
shock.
that moment, I was terrified because I was just like, what if he did die? And obviously the police will get involved. And now what am I supposed to say? Because essentially, yeah, this could be a voluntary manslaughter or murder or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know
yeah, 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 yeah.
what, and I was like, she put me and my husband in a very weird, situation, like a dangerous situation, not to mention, obviously, my father, she put him in a dangerous situation. So I was just like, no. So more and more contact that I had during that particular trip, which I think was like a 16-day stay or something like that.
Mm,
I'm looking through different lenses, I'm seeing through different eyes, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like she's also become a monster, or maybe she always has been, but she's just far more underhanded and
yeah.
calculated. And
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Wife. It is a fantastic movie with Glenn Close, and I recommend anybody who's contemplating
Hmm.
estrangement is like going through confusion about a parent who's like subtle and insidious. Watch this movie because that movie is my mom. That if you see that movie, and Glenn Close is fantastic. She's incredible in this movie. I was like, I've never been able to describe my mom, but watching that, I was like, that's my mom
You're
to
able to
a
pinpoint it.
freaking T. Yeah, and the whole husband wife dynamic in that, who her husband is, that was my father, and who Glenn Close is, that is my mother. And so while we're there, my my mom had said something. She kind of dropped this little hint about like, well, you're not coming back to California, so at some point I'm going to have to move because yeah, at some point your father's going to die,
Yeah.
and who's going to take care of me? Yeah, yeah,
Girl.
I know. And I was like,
Okay.
Stephen, my husband's name is Stephen. Stephen and I can help you. We can support you. Okay, we might not live here on the ground, but there's a lot that we can do. And so she just kind of drops the seed. And then my husband and I, we leave. We come back to the Netherlands. And I don't know how it comes up, but I guess she tells me that my sister and her family, they're all going to buy this kind of like ranch type situation where my mom and dad,
Hmm.
and then my sister and her family will have their house, like a family compound kind of thing, which was my father's dream. He always wanted us to live on the same property. Family cult vibes much.
Yeah.
And nobody told us that this was what their plan was while we were in the country in their house. And it literally, this whole plan was completely against anything my mom ever taught me to do, like in my life and moving into retirement age and all of these things. It was just not congruent at all. And I was lied to, like I was completely left out of the picture. Like nobody ever said that this was what they were going to do. They're going to sell their houses and buy a different house and move quite a distance away from where we're
Yeah.
from. And so, I said, geez, like, how come you guys didn't tell us that while we were in person? And she lied. Just there were so many lies that were coming out of my mother's mouth, and I never knew her to lie, like bold face. Like I never had that. She may have, but I just didn't know about those
Yeah.
experiences. But this was like obvious. Like it was so. in your face, obvious. And I just straight told her, I'm like, you're lying. Like you're lying in my face right now on Skype. She didn't really deny that she was lying. But at that point, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. So I closed the Skype call with her. And then I sent an email to her and to my dad. And I said, listen, I'm done with you guys. Like, if you guys can't be transparent, I just can't have this relationship with you anymore.
Yeah.
And and I even went so far as to say, like, I don't anything that you're planning on giving me in both of your deaths, I don't even want it. Like, write me out of the will. Like, I just don't want any part
Wow.
of this. I don't want any part of this energy anymore. I don't want any part of this frequency anymore. Like, it makes me sick. It makes me physically sick, emotionally sick, mentally sick. Like, I can't.
Yeah, yeah.
And they didn't fight for it. Like, they didn't fight for it. There wasn't like, oh my God, no, what are you talking about? No, 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 let's get on a call right now. No, there was literally no fighting me on it. And which clearly said to me, you guys prefer to be not transparent and
Hmm.
prefer not to have me in your life because I'm basically going to hold you to task. I'm gonna force you to be transparent essentially. And so when that was done and they didn't fight me on it, then it was over. We were done. And all of these other memories started to come about. Like when I was 15, I found out that I had a half brother. And then I discovered, like, I don't know, I was 32 or something, I had some half sister, like, yeah, always from my dad.
Girl.
This was part of the House of Secrets stuff.
No, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh my
This is like,
God.
okay, so that makes sense. Oh, that's the lie there. Oh, there's the secret there. And when I talk with other people, like particularly, I have some friends and some former colleagues who grew up like in a house with alcoholics. Like dad was an
Hmm.
alcoholic,
Yeah.
was an alcoholic. They said, I know the sensation, this somatic feeling you're having in your body of this secret feeling where your body knows something's not right, but you might not have the words for it, because you're being gaslighted all over the place. Uh, but that helped me because they're like, for them, they're like, we call it ick. I'm like, yeah, that's the feeling.
It's
It's an ick.
big.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people who are now estranged or are contemplating it would say they had that similar ick feeling. And you know what else? There are so many more icks coming out. Like I don't, and I know this, I kind of feel like I'm never even gonna know the half of the ick. You know what I mean?
Are you okay
Like
with that?
I think so. I think so because there are still layers that I'm working on and processing and releasing and healing and shifting and
Ooh.
stuff. Yeah,
Hmm.
for years. I mean, the hardest part has been this last decade. That's like when I say the hardest part, I mean the heaviest layers, I guess is what I mean, the
No, yeah,
densest
yeah, yeah.
decade. Um, and it's just a trip. Like it can do your head in, but it's so necessary to go through. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, we say this also in EFT, like you can still heal without having to relive the trauma. You can sneak up on trauma through various techniques and still release it from your body and heal it completely, process it where it's like a watermark. It's like an echo. You can talk about it. It doesn't trigger you, doesn't feel sharp, doesn't feel intense. So I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, I think I'm okay if I never know
That's
everything.
good, girl. Because
I'm also like, I don't know, do I really want to know everything?
hmm.
I think it's enough to know that there was stuff. Like it's enough to know there was it. But do you have to know all the details and all of the layers of the ick? It's just enough to know that there's ick, heal the ick. And you
Yeah.
might ask me a question next year and I might say, no, I want to know everything. I don't know. That's where I am now. Thank you for listening to that because that was a lot.
I feel, and this is just like my opinion, I feel like it may be different for others. You need to remove yourself from the environment.
You do.
Mhm.
It's so important. It's crucial
It
in
is.
my opinion. And that was also,
No, yeah.
part of my journey. Like I left the house right when I turned 18. And this is an interesting thing. Like I remember growing up and I remember, I don't know, it must have been 10 or something like that. And I was mad at I was being a little 10-year-old and I was mad. And I was like, when can I move out? And I remember my mom saying, when you're 18. And I was like, then I
Dang.
am. And then 18, and
Wait.
I moved. I never remember. I never forgot. I was like, when I'm 18, I kept saying that when I'm 18, when I'm 18. And then I went away to college. I went down to Southern California and I went away for, my 4-year degree. And I stayed for like 6 years down there. And I also went back. I also went back to
Yeah,
Northern.
yeah.
But that dynamic, there were shifts between me and my parents as I started, of course, entering into the adult world and so on and getting my own career and all of that. But I feel like still that level of codependency was there. And also this piece of like, they're always just going to shove everything under the carpet, and that big elephant is always going to be in the room, but
Ugh.
they're not gonna address it. And I would be like, let's address the elephant in the room. Like, let's address the elephant in the room. And here's the funny part. I'm like, do you go to work, you two, and you don't address the elephant in the room? Do you just like sweep everything under the carpet? That can't be possible that you go to a job and you don't address the hard things. So how
Mhm.
is it that house that's what's going on? So there were some emotions that were allowed in the house: rage, anger,
Yeah.
um, disappointment. If they were disappointed, it was okay for them to be disappointed. But
Yeah.
like if I were angry or I were upset, that's not okay. So again, that lack of congruence and that lack of
Hmm.
for you, like, nope, it's only available for me that I get to be angry and mad and pissed off. You're the
The
child, so
control.
you don't get to have that. Yeah. And so if we were approaching emotions that they could hang with, okay, fine. But
Yeah.
then I don't want to only approach those emotions. I want to talk about the other emotions. Those emotions are also important. And, then that's when I'm the bad guy. And that just got so old. Like it felt so wrong. Yeah. And my father now passed away. Nobody told me, which I never, I figured when any of these people
I'm
pass away,
sorry, girl.
yeah,
That's
that
just
was
like a
really,
habit for someone to say I'm sorry when,
no, no, no,
oh,
no.
sorry, girl.
It's I feel like it's thoughtful. I feel like it's meaningful that someone
How do you
cares.
feel?
Well, we can talk about this because of the type of work that you do. Um, I found out 45 days after he passed away. And how I found out was I was in the bed sleeping, 3 a.m. And it was like somebody picked me up, or like somebody was in my body. It was like it was not me. It sounds very strange, but it was like somebody walked me down the stairs, got me in front of the computer, and I ended up being in front of that computer for 3 hours, like on a mission, just entranced, like almost under hypnotic spell. It's
Yeah,
bizarre.
no, yeah.
Looking for, is my dad alive? And looking for essentially an obituary. I mean, it came out of left field
Th
because
this was out of nowhere without anyone telling you anything?
no, I was dead asleep at 3 a.m. And all of a sudden I woke up and was like, I gotta go see if my dad's dead. So at the third hour mark, I found what would be his date of birth and a date of death. That was it. And just a little rose
Uh,
icon. Yeah, that's how I found out. And I was like, and then what I wanted to know was, where is this? Who did this? Who wrote this? Where is this from? So I traced this one line back to a newspaper where they were living, a local newspaper, printed just his name with the date of birth and date of death. That's all that my mother and my sister had given the newspaper when he had passed away. There was no formal obituary, it was literally one line, just his date of birth and date of death and his name. Yeah. And so then I contacted the funeral home, because
mhm.
when I traced it back to this newspaper, then I was able to see that it was actually the funeral home that had posted that. It was not officially my mom and
Yeah.
my mom did. And so I contacted them and I just said, I'm this man's daughter and I wanted to verify, is this true that he's passed away? And they were like, yeah, he passed away 45. Well, there was no official service, but they did all of the preparing of the body and he was cremated. And then
No
apparently,
service.
yeah, no service. No. So just that also tells you something, doesn't it? And then they had him cremated and they buried his ashes in the garden in the back. Yeah. It's just a very strange story.
Weird.
Yeah, very weird. And I don't know. I've had a lot of talks with, other people. Like I work with a spiritual counselor, and I just kind of feel like that's testimony to also how they felt about him. You know what I mean? And I just kind of feel like they were also running on a lot of fear, and also like, we got to get this guy gone. Like this guy is just bad news. He's just intense, hardcore energy, and make sure that he can't haunt us kind of thing. anymore. I
Mm.
think it's bizarre. I think it's absolutely bizarre, but that's how I found out. And then my dad started visiting me. His soul started visiting me. Yeah, it
How
did.
was
And
that, girl?
that was actually really good. That happened for probably about a year and a half. And that was very helpful with respect to me getting to a level of forgiveness and a level of sort of feeling, I don't know if whole is the word, but I want to say that, like maybe some form of completion. Yeah. And what I was able to see in meditations and through talks, I would just start talking out loud to his
Hmm.
soul, able to see that he was on the other side in healing rooms, in basically in a rehabilitative state. And he was
Yeah,
being like a life review what he had done with me. And I don't know about with others. I wasn't allowed to see that, if you
yeah,
will. I was able to see in relation to me and to us, you know, our life and how he had impacted me and what he had done. And when he actually first started, it was very interesting. When he first started visiting me, he was not, it was kind of like his soul was in between two worlds in a way. He was not all the way yet in the heat
yeah,
on the side. And he was actually first coming at me angry. And he was actually angry. He didn't want to accept that he was dead. He was angry that he was dead. And I'm not so sure that at first he realized that he was all the way dead, if that sounds a bit
yeah.
strange. But you know, and so I was setting very firm energetic boundaries and telepathic boundaries
Yes,
essentially. And I,
yes, you have to.
you don't get to visit me. I will let you know when you can visit me. And so he did back off. And then all of a sudden, I could feel the shift in his soul that he got to the place of acceptance. Okay, I'm dead and I'm not in control here. And the surrender entered.
Hmm.
So when that happened, there was a softness and I felt safe to go, okay, I can invite your soul back. We can start having conversations now and
Wow.
let's do it. So that's when he started saying sorry. You know, his soul started saying, I'm very sorry. I see what I did. Um, and we would just have these talks, in essence, father-daughter talks. So now I have the dad that was on earth and I call him by his first name. And then
Mm.
regarding my father's soul, I actually will say dad for that. I don't call the guy that lived
Wow.
on earth dad. I call him by his first name if I refer to him like to myself or to somebody else. But it's interesting. So that happened for like about a year and a half straight, these soul conversations, these soul healing
Hmm.
conversations. Actually, it happened with my half brother too, where I'll have like about a year and a half with their soul, and then they're just gone. It's like, okay, I don't need you anymore, or we're done, we're complete. And that has happened also with my dad.
Hmm.
Uh, Although I know if I want to call him, I can.
No,
But
yeah.
it's something interesting has happened as of recently. I don't know if it's this Pluto shift from Capricorn to
Yeah.
Aquarius.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've been feeling this yourself, but all of a sudden family memories are coming up again. And I'm in a place, maybe it's final residual anger, but I'm in a place of anger right now with my mom and dad.
Yeah.
I'm in a place emotionally and energetically. Maybe it's the final clean out. I don't know,
Hmm.
but today that's where I sit. Even though I had been at a place of forgiveness with them, right now I'm at a
Yeah.
place I'm angry with them, very angry with them. Yeah. And I don't know if that's because I just came back from California. So I hadn't been to our home state, home country, my home city in 6.5 years, actually, since that whole estrangement happened in 2018. I have not been back to the United States. And I just came back. My husband and I were there September to October 2024. And yeah, I think part
Did you
of
go to your
this,
home?
so they don't live there anymore, but we did go. I said to my husband on day one, I want to drive to my family, my childhood home. I want to see it because they have sold the house, but you know, like I want to look at it. I wanted to kind of maybe be a way of closing
Yeah, yeah,
out,
yeah, yeah.
closing contracts and chapters. So we did. We drove there. We sat in front of it for a little while. I took a picture of it. It looks worse to me, actually. My one thing, like the yard and the like the house, like was nice on the
Yeah, yeah,
outside.
yeah, yeah.
Now they're the people who bought it, they just completely, it looks like concrete, actually. It just does not even look like any life or any love in that house, which to me is like, that's just that house. That
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah,
basically burnt down or something in order to
yeah.
have new energy, you know? But yeah, I think maybe that's kind of, I'm on the heels of this kind of final, maybe cleaning
Yeah.
out or out after having just come back. And I think this kind of final anger piece is maybe this last leg of integration on
Hmm.
everything I've done with respect to my process and healing. Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot, girl. Oh my God. I'm like, you're leaving me speechless. Have you thought about writing a book?
You know what? So this is you need maybe you can help me with this. You're literally the second person who's told me that this week. And I get asked this probably once a month or every couple of months. I'm gonna write a book. Have you ever written a book? I want to read your book. Would you write a book? I would buy your book.
Write
And
it, girl.
I know I feel a book inside of me, but I don't know yet what the topic is or what the chapters are or what the title would be. I don't know. So if you get an idea, I welcome you telling me
I'm
what the
literally just
book should be
saying, and what
about.
I'm getting is just for you to write. Like, it's weird. I don't know how you work, but it's like just spew it out, and then like the rest will come.
I love that. Thank you. I do. You picked up on that because even when I just write my newsletters, for example, that's what I do, and it feels really organic. And the
Is
thing
that
that
a projector thing? Or
yeah,
is
like
it?
I think the thing that's really important for projectors is that element of flow.
Hmm.
That's very much inherent to our aura and our type. And the other piece of it is that authenticity piece. Like I don't when I
Yes.
tell this, yeah, you probably understand this. Like when I tell this story, I'm always like, oh my God, people must just be like, this is so made up. Like it's so crazy. And I'm not even telling
I
you half of it.
know.
That's not even half of it, right? Like I feel like there's so much more I could be saying, but that's
Hmm.
already.
Hmm.
So it feels like, but I guess that it is my story. I just need to feel like that is my story. This is the truth. That it.
You need to use that throat chakra. And I don't know, like as you talk, like I envision things and I see things, and there's like this, I don't know, use your voice to advocate for this just like topic, right? Just because it's like you could say, and is this going to trigger people? I feel like it's a way of like breaking generational curses because you don't need to stay in contact with your family if they're not going to like involve you, if they're going to just like blatantly continue to disrespect you, you know? And then it's like another thing when you have your partner and then like they're, doing things, it's just like, yo, like, come on now. It's one thing to do it to me, and it's another thing to do it to my partner.
And my husband, like, so he's a 2-5 environmental
Hmm.
projector. And, he's just sweet and gentle and kind. And, he's not like the type of person who's just gonna, um,
Confrontational. He's not
yeah,
confrontational.
no, 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 no. He's like us. So he has an undefined emotional solar plexus. So confrontation's not his gig at all. And also just like, you know, you have someone buy the short and curlies when they're staying in your house. So if you just, like my mom is just being sarcastic and rude.
Hmm.
I also don't know that I don't think he ever really picked up on it, to be quite candid with you, because he was
Mm,
black state on vacation and in the frame of mind of, oh,
yeah,
chill.
he's
But
relaxing.
I did. I know her really, really well. And I would be like, ew, yuck, not cool. Like, you're not
Hmm.
going to treat my man. I don't know. Are you treating my man like your man? Like, or because you can't do this to your man. You can't talk to
No.
my dad this way. Is that why you're transferring and you're talking
Yeah.
like this to my husband? Like, what's your deal? Um, yeah, and I don't like watching people treat other people ugly. I can't
It triggers
tolerate.
me, girl, because my ego could never. All right.
I like I'm just like, wait, why are you doing that? Like, and I'm a really candid person. I'm a really direct person, but I don't ever like to be intentionally mean. I might make tough
Same.
choices, but I don't want to be mean to people. I don't get that. I just don't understand it. I cannot even understand people going, you know what? I want to be mean to you.
Would you define estrangement and no contact the same? Right?
Yeah, that's a
No?
really, really great question. So for me, I define estrangement as there is literally 100% zero contact at all. So that means no emails, no texts, no phone,
Wow.
no
Yeah.
letter, no seeing in person. Like it's literally like you don't know this person at all. There's nothing. Now, no contact could be that you might have some text messages, but you don't ever see them in person, for
Yeah.
example. So that's my definition. Other people might say, I don't agree with her on that. They might say no contact is the same as estrangement. But um, I know people who don't see family members in person, but they might send letters like, once a year or a Christmas card once a year. And that's then no contact. But estrangement is literally nothing. Now, there's also low contact. So
Hmm.
low contact would essentially be, sort of this same thing of like, yeah, maybe I talk to you on the phone, but I'm not gonna see you very often. I might see you every quarter, or like or I'm gonna see you when other people are around. I'm not just gonna have lunch with you alone or whatnot.
Mm. Yeah. Hmm. How do you respond to the idea? I'm getting questions, girl. That family is everything and you only have one family.
Yeah, this is the common phrase, which by the way,
Mm-hmm.
often toxic, very
Yes.
toxic. It is
Yep.
extremely toxic because um, people know their family, but they
Yeah.
don't know your family or what you went through in your family. So when people say that you only have one family, what they're trying to do is attach their definition and their
To yours.
experience in family. That's right. And so it's a very abusive statement. I don't tolerate that statement. And when I hear other people make a statement such as that, I don't back them and I don't support them. And I say that's not your call. It's completely inappropriate. And then I give them examples. So examples are this girl was molested by her father. This boy was molested by her father, but that's her only father and that's her only family. So you want her to go back or you want him to go back to that family and to that father, that one and only one that they have? Well, not in
Yeah.
that case. Oftentimes, the
Yeah.
retort comment back. So no, then you really need to check this absolute statement that you're making. When people talk in absolutes, that's
Hmm.
very dangerous.
Yeah.
Extremely dangerous. And I don't support absolutes. I don't support a binary, either or, either yes or no, or black and white. No, we've got the power of and. We have lots of different options, lots of different choices, lots of different, potential scenarios. It's not always just this one way. It doesn't go like that. In an ideal world, we want our family. In an ideal
Right?
world, we want to live with our family and be around our family. So when someone is saying you only have one family, you shouldn't do what you're doing regarding your family, they're ostracizing that person again. And they're also making that person the bad guy. They don't know what mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, or whomever did. And also
Yeah.
they know the process that person had to go to take that very courageous, very brave step to say, I'm done with my family. It is
Hmm.
courageous because you lose everything. In my case, now some people just say, I'm not going to talk to mom anymore, but they still talk
Yeah.
to dad,
Hmm.
right? Or I'm not going to talk to dad anymore and they still talk to mom or
Yeah.
whatever. In my case, everybody was gone. It was
Yeah.
everybody. So there's no backup plan here,
Mhm.
So like, why would I make a choice like that? Why in the world would I say I am going to have nothing to do with my mom, dad, sibling, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, and so on? I mean, why? That's very isolating. That could be very lonely. That could be terrifying and scary. What if something did happen to me?
Yeah.
What if I lost my house or whatever? Who the
Yeah.
hell am I going to turn to? So like, really, does a person really want to do that? There
No,
has to be
yeah.
pretty heavy hitting that they took that choice. And to me, by the time that a person takes that choice, they're at the end. There's nothing, they don't feel there are any other options, which is also sad if you really think about
It
it.
is.
It is. It's tragic.
Ugh.
And I was at the end. I didn't feel like there were more options
No,
anymore.
yeah. Mm.
And did I want that to be the option? No, I did not. Absolutely not. But it is
Yeah.
it's a statement that people do make. I had to give up a couple friendships for that reason.
That's
I
crazy.
was, I was pretty fortunate actually. I mean, I think it's because, well, you can tell, I'm a straight shooter. I'm really candid. I'm really direct. So people expect me to be very honest, I think, because this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
how I
yeah.
talk, right? But yeah, I had a friend here in the Netherlands, and it kind of felt like she was interrogating me all the time. And then she would come back to, well, you're probably going to call your mom again, or when are you going to talk to your mom and dad again? I'd be like, would you listen to me? And would you support what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's not going to happen anymore. You're my friend. You know the experiences.
Hmm.
Interesting. This particular friend had her own family drama and trauma and a very similar dynamic to my family. I think that it probably scared the daylights out of her that I had taken this decision,
Yeah.
because I think she was like, it was in her face essentially regarding, whoa, she did that. Like, whoa, is that what I'm ultimately gonna do? Maybe, I
Hmm.
don't know. That up.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah, 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 yeah. There's a reflection there, definitely.
at the end of the day, I finally just said, I can't be friends with you. I'm sorry, but to feel like I'm constantly judged, um, I'm not going to put myself through that. No. So I let the friendship go.
I'm
And
sorry.
that is part of estrangement. That is a very common part of estrangement, by the way, because by the time the estranged person takes that decision, this decision of a lifetime to,
No, yeah,
you
yeah.
people that really do matter to them because they don't feel seen, they don't feel loved, they don't feel heard, they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel valued, they don't feel respected. And also, the vast majority of people who take this decision, they have family members with personality disorders, with extreme
Yeah.
dysfunction, right? So these people are mentally ill and they're not doing anything usually about
They
it,
don't
or
want
they
to heal themselves.
stop taking their medication or whatever it is. They're harmful in some way. So by the time that this person takes this decision, it was a really hard, really,
Yeah.
really process. And then to have done something so powerful and to be knocked down over and over again
Hmm.
and criticized, it just feels like being back in that family unit again, but with friends. And so it's common, for example, I told you about that Facebook group, that estrangement Facebook
Yeah.
group. You see this all the time in a lot of the comments or the, lives that we would do with each other where they're like, yeah, I had to let this friend go. And several of them, by
That's
the way,
crazy.
yeah, several of them, by the way, are not as forward about their story as I am. Like they will, when people ask them, oh, what are you doing this year for Christmas with, your family? They might just say, oh, the normal, the usual. Like, don't say that they're not going to
They're
see their
denying it. Yeah.
family. They're so scared of being judged and criticized. They also don't want to tell the story. They don't want to run the risk, they say, of giving a person an opportunity to, spout off these
Mhm.
common phrases. So they just bite their tongue. And I also, everybody has their own path and everybody has their own
No, yeah.
journey. I don't judge anybody's journey, but I hope for them that they do start coming forward and telling,
Absolutely.
because I feel like they don't have anything to hide and it's their right to do that. I do hope that more people stop shying away from sharing their story because they have the right to take the decision that they did, and also just to open up the conversation so that people can become more educated and informed about the truth of estrangement.
100%. I have a couple more questions, girl. I'm not going to keep you on too long. You're such an inspiration, girl.
Aw.
I shed a couple tears, as throughout this podcast. What advice would you give someone who's considering
Being estranged from
and
their family.
that they're not sure like where to start or like where to
Yeah,
go?
yeah. So my first piece of advice would be to perhaps check out some communities. There are
Hmm.
now more nonprofits and
I
organizations
love that.
that are supporting and serving those who wish to be estranged. So I would reach out to them And if they're going to work with a therapist on this particular topic and decision, I would actually reach out to a therapist who's trained in this topic, because there are a lot of therapists who are not. And the reason I
Okay.
say that is because oftentimes I have this in my own experience, and I have had it through other family members who became estranged, um, and friends who became estranged,
Yeah.
where they were the therapist who they were encouraging them to go back to their family, and they didn't. They basically did this statement, "Yeah, but you only have this one family." So they don't understand the dynamics of estrangement. They don't understand the estrangement process, and that could actually be re-traumatizing to the person. So I highly recommend, number two, that if they're going to work with a therapist, that they work with a therapist who knows all about family estrangement, is trained in
Yeah.
it, is going to be supportive. There's a book I highly recommend. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And I
I
recommend that they
love that book. They
are better.
break it down, girl. Like there's some books that I read, like I'm reading A Body Keeps Score and they has high terminology and I'm like, but that one breaks it. Yes, continue. I'm sorry. I just love that book.
I love that you love that book. I love that you know that book, because that book I really believe should be everybody's staple. Read it,
Hmm.
read it over again. And she has a second book, Recovering from, and that one's called listen to me, a workbook style. And so that book is really great. I highly recommend it. And that's the book, by the way, that kind of broke the spell, like for me. When I read that book, I was like, because she does these scenarios, like kind of
Yes,
case.
she does. She breaks it
Yes.
down.
So when you're reading it, you're like, oh my God, that's my family. Oh my God, that's my mom. Oh my
Right?
God, that's
Mom,
my
is
dad.
that you?
Mhm. And that's when you really start to go, the family fantasy starts to get broken and the reality starts to come in. And I feel like that's when you start to re-enter your body and the dissociation starts
Mhm.
to dissipate. And that's what happened for me. There's another book that I started with first, actually, before that one, which was by Dr. Susan Forward, and that one's called Toxic Parents.
This down. Hmm.
So I worked with that. I worked with her before she passed away as a therapist, and she was really, really helpful. She made me feel normalized in my situation. And she was also so sweet. She was like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. So that was really, it felt motherly, to be quite honest with you. It felt like,
Oh,
and I felt seen and understood. So that's another book. The other thing, you know what? Go ahead and also join some of these groups on Facebook as well that have to do with estrangement, because you're also going to see other people who are in the same boat as you. Now, I have to be honest, sometimes I step out of the group for a while, or I don't check into it for a while, because sometimes there were times where I was like, this is too heavy. I can't deal. Like, it's
no.
exhausting. Yeah, and you need to take healing breaks. So I do give that little caveat, that little disclaimer, that if you do join those groups, you remember, a lot of people they're still at the height of their anger, the height of their frustration. So take that stuff with a grain of salt. But it still is nice to know that you do have a community that you could turn to, you could ask questions, you could get resources from. So that's the next thing that I recommend. And I recommend EFT. I know we're going to talk about that next week.
Yeah,
But
yes. I'm so
I recommend EFT tapping, because this is one very powerful tool that is trauma informed, and it also helps you sneak up on trauma without reliving the experience, while basically detoxing, if you will, or exorcising this energy out of your system and recalibrating your meridians, your energetic pathways, so that way your chi starts flowing correctly again. And the piece
yeah.
that's really nice is it's somatic. You're connecting with
Hmm.
your, if you're dissociating, it's a way to get back into the body. And also, it has cognitive therapy built into it, NLP built into it. So you're addressing and acknowledging, that which hurts, that which is painful, that which you suffered, but you're also inviting in the possibility of loving yourself completely, honoring yourself completely, accepting
That
yourself
is
completely.
so
Yeah,
important.
super important. So it rewires the brain, it reduces cortisol in the body, which of course, anybody who has experienced
Yeah,
trauma, generational trauma, has a buildup of, an energetic backup of cortisol, if you will. So EFT is fantastic from that perspective. So it doesn't have to be EFT. That's my go-to
no,
tool.
yeah.
Find their thing. You find
Find
your
something.
Yeah, you find a tool, a practice really, that's going to help you regulate your nervous system, regulate your emotional system, calm that brain down, get you back in the body, help the dissociation to stop happening. And so that's what I recommend is finding your practice,
No,
finding your
yeah.
tool. For me, it's EFT and human design. They're my go-tos always. They snap me right back into my body and help me live, the essence of who I am. But yeah, everybody's got their thing. But those are, I guess, my kind of 5 pieces of advice. I would really say don't go at it alone because it is a lonely process. It's a
Hmm.
terrifying process. Like, I mean, I was diagnosed in the course of it with complex PTSD by a therapist, a psychologist.
Mm.
Becoming estranged could also be, yeah, kind of PTSD inducing, if you will.
I have one more question before we finish and then I'll pull some cards for you. I want to know just like if you're comfortable, like what is your husband, is his relationship with his family like close? And if it is, like how does that, what is that, you know?
Yeah. Oof, that's a good one. Well, we went through the same with his family, and
Oh, okay.
but now they are all in family therapy together,
I want to cry.
right?
I'm
So
done.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
that's also a little, if you want to use the word test, but that is a little bit of a test if you're in the process of like, I'm thinking about being no contact, or I'm thinking about going low contact, or I'm thinking about it being estranged from my family. See if they're willing to get help. See if they're willing to get help with you, if they're willing to go through therapy. Because if they are, and then they do it and they commit to it and they follow through and they're being willing, to be called out on their stuff and they start to acknowledge stuff and they're taking responsibility for stuff, well, they're probably in a decent place. You're probably with some good people who maybe just were not aware, or they weren't aware of their behavior and they needed to learn, they needed to be trained. They needed to learn how to communicate better. That is if they stay in,
No.
with you and they're doing the work. Sometimes they say, okay, yeah, we'll go. And then they go to one session and then they never come back. Now that's a different story. But I'm talking about what they're like really honestly willing to put in the work
Is
and
that
go to
your
therapy.
husband's family?
I don't know yet.
Mm,
This is
okay.
going
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
the past few months, I'd say.
That just hearing that brings happiness. I used to get like super sad. I used to get angry. I used to be like, what about me? But now, like, whenever I hear stuff like that, I see people with great sibling bonds. They're close with like their mom, or like, they have like a healthy relationship. It just brings something to my heart. And I
Mhm.
feel warm. I
Yeah,
love that for
yeah,
you.
yeah, I do too. Like, I mean, if that is possible, I would love that for every family. If there's a
Right?
family that has problems, but somehow they find their way and they get help and support, and there's like mediation or whatnot, and then it's better. And they're able to communicate and relate and be a happy, harmonious, healthy family. Oh my gosh, I'm like you. I'm like, oh my gosh, the little
I
happy
know.
heart emoji,
Yes. And it's
dancing on the
like,
screen.
woo!
Yeah, yeah. But I also realize, that isn't necessarily always the case with everybody, and also isn't always the case when somebody has decided to become estranged. That is a rarity, that the family's willing to get help, and that's also why it got to this point that the family member who decided to become estranged, resorted. This was the last resort, that they're like, okay, I've tried everything, but you're not willing to meet me halfway. You're not willing to make some sacrifices or some compromise. You're not willing to go to therapy and work this stuff out. Um, yeah, and then that's when estrangement ultimately was the final option. And it's really funny because it's not like I never said to my parents, we should go to therapy. I said it constantly. And here's the interesting part.
Mhm.
My father got a master's in family therapy and we never went. Yeah. I mean, I begged for it. I begged for it. Like when I was still under their roof and when it got really hard and heavy when I was 17, I was begging for it. And my mother constantly, I don't believe in therapy. I don't believe in therapy. To me, by the way, that's a tell. When someone says, I don't
Hmm.
believe in therapy, I'm like, you need to check this person out. You need to be mindful of this person. How come they don't believe in therapy? What's going on there?
It's so nice to hear someone like you say, um, your parents on the outside, and like you hear these people giving them like recognition, like, yeah, I would love the relationship that your parents have, or just like the image, and they're like, yeah, they're amazing. It was always, I don't see that. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I see like a different side. I come from a family where we did a lot of the silent treatment and stuff, and we didn't really
Oh
like,
yeah.
there was stuff happening, and then it was always, we would like sweep it under the rug.
First, my mom called it putting you on ice. She said, I'm putting you on ice. And then she would ignore for a week. That
Hmm.
silent treatment is literally so deadly. I'm sorry you experienced that. That's really tough.
When you were like telling your story throughout this whole podcast, it was so interesting because there was like this forgiveness aspect that was coming and this energy. I feel your dad, he's here. There's like this healing forgiveness like aspect. It's something new. And it's probably because I'm attracted to the shadow and stuff, where like my psychic senses, or Cynthia, just protect yourself because he can come in like a wrecking ball.
He's like that. Yes, yes. And
So
you know
I'm
what's
I'm
really
like,
interesting? He's like you saying he's here. I actually, my heart fills and I smile because he was that classic narcissist where cute and charming and sweet and funny and like just keen on like what you need right there in that moment and could give it to you but could quickly obviously take it away, but he's got that little like jokey sweet cute happy smiley energy about him, but he literally had like two souls in one body. That's who he, like that dark, dark,
hmm,
dark, and then this light, light, light soul. It was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. But now, because he's on the other side, I know like I'm safe and I know that. So when you say that, like I feel him here, it makes me really smile. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So listen, I'm going to tell you what I know. What I
hmm,
know is, or what I was told, let me put it that
hmm,
way. So after I found out 45 days later, I contacted somebody to
yeah,
find out. And I was told he had a heart attack. Like I was told he sat
I
down,
feel
sat,
it.
yeah, stood straight up. And I was told he just like fainted. And then the ambulance came and apparently revived him. And then I was told he had another heart attack when he got to the hospital. I don't know what led to the heart attack so I have some, and
No, yeah,
I'm not going to talk about this because I don't know. And this is just my
no, yeah.
own
Hmm.
personal sort of belief on something facilitating the heart attack. Uh, I don't have confirmation on that, but that is just my own feeling on it, that something led to it, if you will. But what I was told was it was a heart attack.
Do you know what was his human design? What was his like zodiac?
Yeah, he was a generator. So he was a 6-2 generator and his zodiac. So he was born on January 22. So he's kind of Cap
Okay.
Aquarius us, but I think he's probably really truly first day Aquarius, probably.
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that. Okay, so this just turned into a mediumship reading. Whatever boundaries you have with your father, like thank you, because I feel it's like there's this energy of like you know that song, I come in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
It's like
And
where
you know what? He's like, I'm being called. They're talking to me. Like, this is, yeah.
but it's funny because it's like I don't know if like he was gentle, but it's like he's like coming through, and I'm just like, okay, like I see you, like I'll get to you. And it's like he's showing me like this, and then like I'm like, I don't know what that means. And then I feel like heavy on my heart, and I can see
Oh,
where he's trying to explain to me, I don't know
yeah.
how a heart attack feels. I don't want to know how it feels, but
Yeah.
he's like connecting the two, and I'm like, cool, because every medium is different. And for me, the first thing that I pick up is how they pass.
Mm.
I don't know how he was raised, I can see, but it's like I truly can feel the forgiveness, the I'm really sorry, because he's showing me all he was shown was like this childhood was like this this fear, this like I don't know if it was like survival, this like a bunch of these emotions, and he's showing me it was a lack of love
From when he was growing
from
up? Yeah.
yes, from
And
him.
survival is a great word. That's a fantastic word. Yeah.
So then he's showing me, with him being a parent, it's like it's one of those things where I know it's not like justifying the, behavior, but it's like I only showed you what I knew, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does. It makes total sense. In some ways. So
Yeah.
there was so like he didn't have his master's in family therapy until I was like 13 is when he got it. Um so like maybe I could excuse him up to a certain point, but it's like
Yeah.
when you get those resources and you're also a probation officer and you're working with foster children and you're working with parent court and CPS, I kind of like, oh, dude, you kind of had a lot of resources there and you're just like more
Yeah.
forgiveness on my side to work on. Like actually my gift to the world in like the sister modality of human design, Gene Keys, is forgiveness. So
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe that's just a little bit more on my side of lore. Okay, that's great that he had those resources, but maybe he never really realized that there was a disconnect, that
Yeah.
there was a gap that, needed to be bridged here. And you know what else when I started to wake up about who my mom is and how my mom is,
That must have been
I
difficult.
started to, yes, because that is an important dynamic. And I started to wonder, like, because she's so insidious, I think like in so many ways she actually did infect and poison my father. Not always the other way around, although it looked like that
Yeah.
in the
Hmm.
house because he was so overt. He was, really animated and expressive. But I often wonder now if they had divorced or whatnot, or he had married another woman or whatever, would would he have been who he was, as hardcore as he was? And sometimes thinking now at my place in life, no, I think that he would have been different if it weren't for her. So I used to think he was facilitating
Yeah.
everything, but now I'm thinking no, she was facilitating more. And you know what? This is going to sound a bit weird, but I liken it to Will Smith and Jada. You know what I'm saying? So Will's a generator and Jada is a projector, but I see a lot of their dynamic like between my mom and my dad's relationship where I see Jada knows she's smart and I see Jada knows that she could basically have Will wrapped around her finger and that she could get him to do whatever she wants him to
Manipulating.
do. Yeah, and it's this kind of covert, subtle, manipulative activity or behavior from her. And my mom is like her, like, quiet, appears to
Hmm.
be weak, but knows herself, can have a strong voice. And my father, in so many ways, he had this idea that he wanted this family fantasy, this perfect family life, because he
Yeah.
didn't growing up with all the survival you described. And I think he was so concerned about losing what he had, losing my mom, losing me, my sister, and so on,
Yeah.
that it was in the struggle to kind of keep it together. And she knew that and she capitalized on that and exploited that, but in such subtle ways, people wouldn't necessarily see that straight
Yeah.
out. I feel like that's what I see when I watch Jada and Will.
And in
Yeah.
this, like, I don't know if you see it in like this aspect where it's like there's a lot, they're kind of dancing this dance. The music has stopped years ago, but they're still going at it.
Right? Like that, putting out this picture that this is
Yeah,
the love. It's like,
uh-huh.
oh, no, 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 no,
But
no,
at
no,
the end
no.
of the day, the relationship, whether they had a divorce, the relationship severed, but it's like they're projecting their own, traumas, wanting this family. And whether you do it or you stay in it for the kids or you stay in it for the needs, because you're like, you have this mentality of where it's like, well, my parents divorced and I don't believe in divorce. And you're so
Yeah,
like in that
yeah,
egotistical, so you're willing to do anything. I feel this coexisting,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
which is so sad. Oh,
Yeah,
girl,
and I feel like they're so attached to the story and the image that they created. They're so attached to we're this power couple. We became this power couple in Hollywood. We got to keep that up. That's exactly how I feel like my parents operated. Yeah, so and I think it's beautiful actually what's happening
yeah.
between Jada and Will because I think we need to see this breakdown happen. Humans need to see this because we put people
Normalize it.
on a pedestal. Yeah. And we need to, people need to realize, no, there's just normalcy here. They're just human beings. And they're just going through this dance and they're just figuring it out. They're just figuring out in their own way. And we might not all agree with the way that they're going about it, but they're figuring it out. And maybe they're not figuring out, but they're not
Yeah.
figuring out. They're figuring it out.
At the end of the day, we'll learn something from it. Oh my God.
Like, I mean, it's sad, it's tragic and everything, but I still think it's beautiful because it's real.
So, inspiration, I'm being shown like a light bulb, and it's like we're trying to turn it on, and I don't know what this. I'm seeing wires trying to hot wire the light bulb. I don't know what's going on, girl. All I know is that this light bulb is like that inspiration. Something's mustering up, something's like
Mm.
being created within you. You're
Yeah.
gonna be doing something. The work that I do is with the chakras, and how I'm translating it is the throat. And with the throat, there's many things, girl. It can literally be you having your own podcast, you going on a talk show host, which I do see that. And we're like, you're sitting down and like you're advocating for something. Like literally, I'm seeing like a podium and you're speaking. Is this a book signing? You're going to be doing something with this, right? You're going to be like speaking up. I do see where like people are going to be triggered, but we live to trigger people. And we have diving for the light. I love this card. It's just one of those things where you're going to be assisting people with, the peace, right? And it's interesting because everything that you do is going to like flow together if it already does. But the topic that we spoke about today, I don't know how it's going to be thrown in with what you do.
Interesting. I love that. Thank you.
You
You
know?
know what's so interesting is I was like, I think in my mid 20s or whatever, and I used to sing. And and I was in a group and we were singing with Tina Marie. Do you remember Tina Marie? We used to
Mm-mm.
do, oh yeah, she sings a song called Love a Girl or I just want to be your lover girl. You don't remember?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, because you know
No,
what,
I'm sorry,
you're younger
girl.
than I am. So anyway, she used to sing with Rick James. Tina Marie used to sing with Rick James, and we went to a party where she invited us to this party, and it was all women. And right when I walked in, though, there was one man there, and he came up to me. I never met him before in my life, and he said, "You are gonna be." I forgot about this, by the way, but it was like maybe 6 years ago. I remembered this. He said, "You are gonna be basically what you just said, like verbatim what you just said. You're gonna be like a teacher, like on a stage or whatever." And
Girl.
yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And all the other things that you just said, but he also said it was going to be probably like at this point in my life, which makes sense from a human design perspective because I'm a 6'3", so I have a six line. So anybody who has that goes through this three-stage life. And
Yeah.
I hit the third stage happens when you're 50. So I hit 50 this year. And so it makes
You don't
sense. And
look
now
it.
I'm like being reminded or being reiterated through what you just channeled, this same
How
message.
does
Thank
that make you feel, girl? Like
you.
you are
It makes
here to
me
do
look,
big things.
yeah, there's been this innate knowingness in me since I was even very small. Um, I didn't know what the capacity would be. I didn't know what the approach would be. And I'm also a Taurus, so of course I'm ruled by the throat. So I realized that something has to be there with my voice, whether that is, communicating as we are, whether that's written or I was singing or chanting or
Something.
whatever. Right? Something. Yeah. So I think that's the piece that your message helps with today, like that it's okay if that is part of the story. And even if that is the story that I lead with, that maybe that it's supposed to be the story that I lead with.
Which comes to the next card.
Wait,
It
from
says free from judgment, free to love. It's like awakening to this is not normal for making that final decision. Like you're gonna guide them through that, and it's like, oh my gosh, Laurie, they decided to go to therapy and you're still be there supporting them. I'm seeing and I'm feeling this like soul family.
that makes sense because, yeah, I think one of the things I was also trying to articulate was like I never imagined that I was going to work with trauma in the way that I do. I used to
I
be a
know.
probation officer, and of course I worked with trauma then, but I didn't really,
Okay.
yeah, and I didn't really know the depths of trauma then. I didn't have the trauma language back then
No,
like I
yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah.
And it took really going through my own trauma awakening and trauma acknowledgement and trauma ownership, really, to be able
Yeah.
to go, okay, this is what it's about. These are sort of the
Hmm.
phase stages of it, and this is what the process looks like. And I'm deep in the process, and I feel like I'm also at a strong place of integration. But I think there's still, more there maybe. And that's probably this piece of like where we can't find the words yet. I think
Yeah.
that, and I also feel like that's why the book hasn't come out yet. And when you said it's a little bit of a step-by-step process, I feel like that's it. Every time I go through the next step, that gives me the next piece.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
go, I had to go through it first, which is very typical 6'3", by the way. I had to go through the experience and embody it in order to be able to then share or teach, have the knowledge transfer because I went through it myself. And so maybe there's just this kind of final leg that I still have to live out and embody. And then that's when the book comes alive or something. Because I feel this, like you asked, and
I
I feel
know.
this book
I
time
feel
of
it.
the,
It's in there.
yeah, and when I talk about it, I feel my throat get tight and constricted because it's not coming out. Yeah. So I know, okay, we're getting there. We're just not there yet.
I'm
Yeah.
so excited for you. And again, I thank you 1,000 bajillion times, if that's a number, for your vulnerability. You embody what I want on my podcast. It's the vulnerability. It takes a lot to even speak and tell your story. I feel you're really respectful as you speak about it. And then, there was a time where you're like, well, I don't want to speak for my sister. You rephrased and, about you. So you're amazing.
Oh, thank you. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you, Laurie Ann Santos. Again, I'm gonna put all like your link at the bottom of the show notes, and then the next episode will be about the amazing, beautiful work that you do. Thank you and goodbye.